Before he could answer, Linda bustled in, her nose wrinkling when she saw the papers in my hand. "What's all this about?" she demanded. Ben tried to explain, but I cut him off, thrusting the loan papers at her. "Did you know about this?" She barely glanced at the documents before waving them off. "Of course I did. Ben's just doing what's necessary for our future." Then, with a smug glance in my direction, she added, "And who are you to question him? You're just the help, after all." The words stung, but they also ignited something inside me. "Just the help?" I said, my voice low but firm. "I've been keeping this store afloat while you two have been treating it like your personal bank account. What's ungrateful is not recognizing the hard work someone's been putting into this business. What's foolish is risking everything for a house we don't even need." I waited for them to defend themselves, but all they did was stare at me, caught red-handed. I left the room, the documents clenched in my hand, feeling like I was holding a verdict yet to be delivered. The kitchen table wasn't meant for business meetings, but that day, it was surrounded by solemn faces, as though we were about to discuss matters of state instead of a candy store. Ben cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "We need to talk about the store's future." I sat down, folding my hands on the table. "We already did that when I found the loan documents," I said firmly. Linda huffed from across the table, arms crossed. "We need to be realistic, Anna. The store isn't pulling in enough to cover the debts. We have to find money somewhere." There it was, the "we" that really meant me. I kept my voice steady. "What do you suggest?" Her eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "You have that inheritance from your parents. It could cover the debts and get the store back on its feet." I felt like I was listening to a stranger, not the woman whose son I had married. "You want me to use my parents' money? The money they left for me, for my future?" Ben finally spoke up. "It's not like you're doing anything else with it." "That money was meant for my security," I said, disbelief clear in my voice. "And what about our security?" Linda shot back. "You're part of this family now, aren't you?" I looked between them, my heart sinking. "I am. But it seems you only remember that when you need something from me." Ben shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that, but we're drowning here, Anna. So you expect me to just hand over my future?" Just like that, I asked Linda to lean forward. "If you care about this family," I began, my voice steady but firm. I thought of all the sacrifices I had made for the store, the long hours, the sleepless nights. I had given everything for this place. "If I do this," I continued, the weight of my decision settling over me, "if I invest my inheritance, I want a third of the store. I want to be an official co-owner." The room fell into a heavy silence, as if the very air had thickened. Then, Linda laughed. It was harsh, bitter, the sound bouncing off the walls like a slap. "You? A co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material." I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, the noise sharp in the tense silence. "Then you find another way to cover your debts, because my inheritance is not your emergency fund." Her face, unreadable at first, twisted into an expression of pure anger. "You've let this family business go under." "I've tried to save it," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "But I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm." I wasn't the type to make late-night visits to the shop, but something deep inside, a gut feeling I couldn't ignore, told me to go to Sugar Haven that night. The place was dark, as expected, but there was a faint glow from the back office. The soft light felt like a beacon, pulling me in. I pushed open the door, and the familiar jingle of the bell rang out, a sound that used to comfort me but now felt ominous, like the prelude to something I wasn't prepared for. The sweet scent of sugar and confectionaries, which had always filled me with nostalgia, now felt suffocating, weighed down by the bitter sting of betrayal. As I walked toward the back, I heard murmurs from the office. The words were indistinct at first, but as I drew closer, they became clearer. Then, I saw them. Ben! His arms around Tessa, the new assistant. She giggled as he whispered something in her ear. The sight burned through me like acid. I pushed the door open fully, and they sprang apart, their faces shifting from shock to guilt within a heartbeat. Anna! Ben stammered, straightening his shirt, his voice a mix of panic and denial. What are you? It's not what it looks like, he tried to explain. I crossed my arms, feeling a cold calm settle over me. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty clear to me. I just caught my husband with his arms around another woman. Tessa, her hands nervously smoothing her hair, couldn't even meet my gaze. We were just going over inventory at midnight, she mumbled, her voice weak, pleading. With the inventory in your arms? I asked, my tone dripping with dry disbelief. Ben's eyes were wide now, full of desperate pleading. Anna, please! You're blowing this out of proportion. I laughed, a short, humorless laugh that felt wrong even as it left my lips. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've got a whole lot of explaining to do. He took a step toward me, his hands outstretched, but I held up a hand. Save it, Ben! I couldn't look at him anymore. I don't know what's worse, the cheating or the pathetic lies. Finally, Tessa spoke up. Her voice was small, trembling with guilt. I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the innocence in her eyes. She was young, naive, caught in the web of a man who couldn't take responsibility for his actions. You should be, I said. And you should also be looking for another job. Ben protested immediately, his voice rising in disbelief. You can't fire her for this. I turned to him, my resolve as cold as steel. I can. And I will. My voice was firm, unwavering. And I'll be looking for a good lawyer in the morning. Ben's face drained of color. Anna, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I cut him off, my voice final. You've made your choices. Now you get to live with them. Without waiting for his response, I walked out of there, my head held high, the sound of Ben calling after me fading into the background. The next morning was bright, a stark contrast to the mood that lingered in our home. I had spent the night at my rental property, away from the tension. As I sat at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a message from Ben. For a moment, I considered not reading it. But curiosity got the better of me. It was a photo of a bank letter addressed to Ben, with the words final notice, immediate repayment required glaring back at me. Beneath it, he had typed, we need to talk. This is serious. I typed back a simple, on my way, and braced myself for what was to come. When I arrived at Sugar Haven, Ben and Linda were already there, pacing like trapped animals. Linda was the first to spot me. Her expression was icy. Decided to show up, did you? She snapped. I nodded, holding her gaze. You wanted to talk. Ben handed me the letter, his voice laced with desperation. The bank's coming down hard. We could lose everything. I scanned the letter, the numbers not surprising but still sending a sick twist through my stomach. So, what's your plan? I asked, my voice calm but demanding. Linda's glare could have cut glass. We wouldn't be in this mess if you had just helped us when we asked. Ignoring her, I turned to Ben. Finn! What are you going to do? Ben ran a hand through his hair, the defeat evident in every line of his face. I thought you could pay it off with your inheritance. My laugh was bitter. I told you, I'm not doing that. Not without a stake in the business. Linda stepped forward, her voice sharp with entitlement. You're being unreasonable, Anna. This is a family business. I met her challenge with a calm I didn't feel. Where was this family when your son was spending money we didn't have on hiring his friends for fun? Ben started to speak but stopped, his eyes dropping to the floor. You don't get to play the family card only when it suits you, I continued. We'll figure something else out. Ben muttered, you'll have to. I agreed, my tone firm. Then we will. But Linda did something unexpected. She smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile, it was cold, calculating. Fine. But if you're not going to help, then you're out. We'll manage without you. You're fired. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch on, and then, in a flash, I matched her smile. Okay. Their surprise was almost comical. Just like that? Ben asked, his voice incredulous. Just like that, I confirmed, my voice steady. I took a step forward, my resolve hardening like concrete. But I want you to know this. I've taken photos of you and Tessa. I have records of all the money you've wasted. If you think you can fire me and sweep this all under the rug, you're wrong. Linda's smile vanished, and in its place, a flash of panic. You wouldn't dare. Oh, but I would, I said, my voice cold. And when I leave, I'm taking all my hard work with me. You can explain to the bank why the business is about to tank without the person who is actually running it. Months passed since I last set foot in Sugar Haven. Life had settled into a new rhythm. The crisp sound of papers turning, the hum of focused conversations, and the sight of problems being managed, these replaced the scent of sugar and spice that used to fill my days. I sat in my new office, the contrast between this space and the cluttered back room of the confectionery striking. My phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Claire, a former employee, and the only person from Sugar Haven I still kept in touch with. Hey Claire, what's up? I answered, my tone cautious, unsure of what news I was about to hear. You haven't heard? Claire's voice was filled with pity. The shop closed down last week. The bank foreclosed on them. And the house too. I leaned back in my chair, a weight lifting off my shoulders that I hadn't realized was there. I see. And Ben and his mother? There was a pause, then Claire's voice dropped. They're not doing great. Rumor has it they moved in with his aunt. No one's seen them much. I sighed, unsure how to feel about it. Thanks for letting me know, Claire. She hesitated before speaking again, her voice quiet but sincere. Anna, everyone knows you were the heart of that place. It was never the same after you left. A small, sad smile touched my lips. I appreciate you saying that. How about you? Found a new job yet? She asked, her voice hopeful. Yeah, I replied, I'm working at a bakery downtown. It's not Sugar Haven, but it's a start. That's great to hear, I said. You always had a talent for baking. I'm sure you'll do well there. We chatted for a few more minutes before saying our goodbyes. I hung up the phone and looked out the window, watching the bustling street below. Life had moved on, and so had I. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. My assistant peeked in. Your 3 o'clock is here, Anna. Thanks. Send them in, I responded, shaking off the remnants of nostalgia. The clients came in, a husband and wife team, their faces etched with concern. I stood to greet them, ready to dive into yet another challenge. "We've heard great things about you, Anna," the wife said as we sat down. "They say you're the best crisis manager in town." I smiled. The title felt good, like it belonged to me now. I'll do my best to live up to that reputation. "Now, tell me about your business. Let's see how we can turn things around." As they spoke, I listened closely, already forming strategies in my mind. This was my world now, where every problem had a solution, and every crisis was an opportunity. The meeting stretched on, the client's initial anxiety fading into hopeful smiles as we discussed the possibilities. They left with a renewed sense of purpose, and I turned back to my desk, my heart lighter than it had been in a long time. In the end, I realized something important. Sometimes, the sweetest outcomes come only after the most bitter trials. And the future? The future was mine to create, one careful step at a time.